To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we need approval of the minutes.
Do we have a quorum?
Thanks. I don't think we do.
I believe so. Is Dick and Bob or?
We're present. Mr. Horton is up in Washington on a family emergency.
Wow. I tried to shut it off.
I just don't know who are actually members.
I don't, honestly.
Jim Borley, Knowles, Dalton, Horton. And Bob and Dick, you guys may be able to help me out as well. Who else are actual committee members for the health committee? Aside from you two and Jim Borley?
Yes.
And Lori. Lisa,
and then is Larry official on that, Dick?
Yes.
Okay, so I think that's.
and what we're just talking about is you two are the only actual sitting members of the committee that I see.
So they just wouldn't be able to make a decision, correct? We could still hold the meeting and they can still go through the documents.
Yeah.
So.
There's no vote.
So there'll be no signature on this thing tonight then?
So you can't approve the minutes because you don't have a quorum.
Okay.
We can discuss we can basically treat it like a work session and discuss the agreement. And based on that discussion, I guess Robert can make some adjustments and we can continue our negotiations, staff's negotiations with FAC. But I'm not sure that, we can't have a vote to recommend something to the council. But with the timing, I think regardless, we'll bring whatever we have to the council. Staff will, no matter what.
Well, Robert, I was under the understanding if we didn't have a quorum, we couldn't have this meeting. Is that not true?
Well, what he's saying is you can't have a decision on it.
I understood that part from the
Yeah.
beginning, but I just didn't think we could have a meeting and even talk about this stuff at all. So I'm just asking, so I could be wrong.
I think you can talk.
Okay, all right,
You can't make a decision.
okay. Well, I'm going to turn this over to Blair then.
Me?
Yeah, you.
You think?
You're welcome.
Blair, could I interrupt?
Sure.
It looks like we have a guest on the call, Danette Killinger, and she's from County Alcohol and Drugs. She was asked by Lisa to join us so that eventually, probably next meeting, we could talk about possible programs or interventions that they could help us with in the city regarding mental health and other things. So I thought maybe we should have her at least introduce herself.
That'd be great.
Could I recommend, the other going through the document may take us a little while. Maybe we could have her kind of introduce herself right off the bat.
Yeah, I think that's
free
a good
her
idea.
up.
Thank you, Dick, for the introduction. Hi, my name is Danette Killinger. I work for Linn County Health Services in our alcohol and drug program and also oversee our mental health promotion and prevention programs. And it just briefly had a conversation with Lisa about just some training options for community, for organizations around mental health, suicide prevention, And so I said this might be a good fit for me just to come join and listen tonight and kind of get a feel for some of what's being discussed. And then also, in the future can share some of what we've been doing. We've been working with the school district to do some staff training. So look forward to maybe a future meeting, sharing a little more in depth. Thank you.
Thank you.
Blair, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to put you under the bus here, but
No worries.
Robert, is there a couple of changes to this agreement that we have here that's here, but it's not here, but it's on the document there? Is that true?
Well, I got a scratched up version that we talked about today, so that's what I know from there. And as far as I know, this is the latest version of one.
Yeah, I think that's what Julie
This is
did say.
yeah, on the screen is the working draft that that's got the track changes, so it's all marked up and we know who's made the changes and so forth. And so the goal of this meeting is to have, or was, assuming we had a quorum, was to have this agreement basically make sure that Robert has everything he needs to have a draft ready for approval by the council at the next council meeting. And so anything that anyone has, any problems that anyone has with this agreement or anything that needs to be added to it or changed, etc., we need to nail that down tonight as much as we can.
So has everybody seen this?
This is just basically like if we didn't meet here and we said, please put in your comments on there.
Yeah.
So that's all we're doing.
Yeah.
Is just,
Okay.
Please put in, we can't have a meeting on it, so a decision on it, so just please put in your comments, and if you're here, then I'll listen to your comments right now. If not, then we'll get them to Julie.
Mhm.
I've got a couple that I wrote in mine on green that I was going to inquire about, just to start it out with. On the agreement for service, the applicable laws and standards, I've got under section 5, whatever it is, under whatever. That's sort of the hierarchy there. It's going to have to be changed just so everybody knows a little bit, because if you go to the Exhibit A scope of services and go down to 5, 6, and 7, it sort of lays out there how somebody is thinking about how this is all going to work, as in the 7-member board on the scope of services was put in there as in, if that's an FAC 7-man or 7-person policy board, which is, it is just set up that way. And so from what I get right here, what people were thinking about was basically you have the FAC and then you have this board above them on their side of the ledger. It says in here it's got to have a city councilor on it, and it's got to have a police chief or designate on it. But other than that, it's an advisory board to them. They're going to set it up to help themselves out. And then on this side, city side, you have the health committee that advises the council above it. So that's from our past discussions, and that's sort of the hierarchy that I get that people want. And so that's just going to take a little bit of rewriting this number 5 to make it work out that way. Not that anybody cares with me, but over on the lease, on number 8, improvements by Lessee, it says down here, Lessee further agrees that all improvements made on said lease premises shall be removed by the lessee. This is if they are, leaving or whatever. And somebody marked out at lessee's expense. Well, I think that should be in there because that's the way it is. And I mean, what you're actually saying there is if you're leaving and you're taking your stuff, we're not paying you to take your stuff.
Mhm.
That's all it says. And so I think that one should be in there. So I can talk with Ray and he can talk with whoever put it in there. See what it.
I put that in there.
Hey, Robert, excuse me, you need to turn on your mic.
Oh.
If it's not on. There we go, thank you.
Yeah.
So basically that's where the thinking comes from, and we'll just have to deal with that. But,
So am I understanding we're talking about the lease and not the?
yeah, that's why I said lease. Yeah,
Yeah,
the lease
okay.
number 8. Yep.
Yeah, I thought we started with the first document.
We
but
did.
That's fine.
We did. And then we
No.
moved over to the lease. Yep.
Okay.
You're right. You're correct. Those were the two things that just from my standpoint, that I had in here.
Okay,
Other than that,
So before we move on, then any comments on that provision in the lease, where in improvements by lessee, we have it on the board right here. What Robert brought up is there's a strike through portion in the middle that says where at lessee's expense was struck through.
So this is Brock.
Do you have a comment on that?
Yes. So this is Family Assistance and Resource Center Group, and we're in a partnership with the city of Sweet Home, and it's literally going to be between 2 and 3 truckloads full of stuff. And if for some reason all of a sudden, let's say 2 months down the way, you go, well, I don't want family assistance to do it, I don't want to have to haul away all of those shelters. Those shelters we're building on behalf of Sweet Home as a partnership with Sweet Home. We're giving them to Sweet Home. We don't want to be responsible for the removal and getting the property back to its state beforehand. And so it's a little bit different because this is a partnership agreement rather than a lessor-lessee type agreement. And that's why I struck it out. Is because I don't want to have to pay for all that. I mean, that'll cost me thousands and thousands of dollars. And the reality is this is going to be an endeavor ongoing for all of us.
Okay. I understand that better, and I will take it to the powers to be, and I understand what you're saying, but this is a lease. We're using the words lessor and lessee for particular reasons. We're not doing partnership. In fact, it says in here we're not a joint venture with you.
Right.
So it is a landlord. So it is a lessor lessee.
So Brock,
Perfect.
one suggestion on that is we could have a provision in there that limits that exempts any improvements that are on our site plan. That is, we're talking about having, there's the office there, there's the shower building, there's all the various huts, etc.
I'm good with that. It was just mainly to kind of protect us. If for some reason Sweet Home felt we weren't performing to the requirements that they intended, and let's say they pretend they wanted to get someone else, another entity. I don't necessarily, I mean, I would work it out with the city. I would figure things out to make it fair, but I don't want to be absolutely on the hook to get that property back to the state it was in before, the environment and such.
And there's a number of improvements that the city's making as well, fencing, etc.
Exactly.
So Robert, my comment would be that we should have a provision in there that refers back to the site plan and the structures put in place there, and that is our starting point, and that FAC is not responsible for getting it to a state that exists.
Not taking anything away that's in the site plan.
Right.
Okay. I understand.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yep.
Any other comments on that?
Oh, I did want to, somebody struck out the $3 million and put in $2 million on the deal. Was that the matchup with your,
That was FAC, and what it is, I'll be just totally upfront and honest with everyone, is I sent our certificate of policy to Ray, the city manager, and ours is currently $1 million, and then we have an addendum that will add 2, 2, and 2. The 3 will require me to go out and kind of, in a sense, re-seek and reevaluate our insurance. And my only fear there was if for some reason we couldn't get it, it would be an issue. And this was Because a lot of this language was taken from Walla Walla, I wanted to find out what Sweet Home requires. But also I did talk with Ray, and I'll go out and ask for a bid and what the cost is to get those requirements. But if we go to a 3 million, it will require me to, and essentially kind of request our entire policy.
Okay,
And that's
okay,
the only
but-
reason why I
But
did that.
your policy now can cover the 2, 2, and 2.
2, 2, and 2. So
Okay,
if they're
okay.
good, we'll do 2, 2, and 2. If
Gotcha.
not, we'll go out and seek it. I just don't know what it will mean
Got it.
if we do that. And I don't want to be in
Okay.
breach of the contract.
Right. And basically, like, to put on the, since we got it on, basically what we've done, Counselor Trask, is we're not having a meeting, we're basically having a staff discussion,
Okay,
okay?
I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Because that's who's discussing it with the other folks, so.
Yeah, so do,
It turned into a staff discussion when we don't have a quorum.
so do we
And-
need
and
something
if-
else to cover?
Hmm?
Do we
And
need
again,
something
if,
else to cover?
again, if I might, my sense, and I had said this to Ray, the first document seems more pertinent to the group. And the second document is more between FAC and the city. And that's fine. I appreciated listening to all that. But, you know, we've only got a limited amount of time, and it feels like we should probably try to zero in on that first document.
And
I'm
and-
done.
Okay,
and
so
just one more comment on any part of it. Where we put homeless, it kind of, it's not a politically correct term. We need to change that. Shirley, are you on? I can't remember what the
Ray,
nomenclature was. It's not
Ray,
unhoused.
Ray,
It's
Ray changed it to Sweet Home Managed Outreach and Resource Facility.
that would work perfect. Yeah, if we ever use homeless, we need to use the term. It wasn't unhoused, but it was another.
It's dropped throughout. I've got the, I'm surprised everyone else doesn't have it, but I have the document that Ray used, and that's changed throughout. You missed one or two, but.
So, just to provide a little structure for our discussion, we're going over both the agreement for services and the lease. We can do it a couple different ways. We can just run through the whole document and people make comments as we go through it. Or we can take comments from each interested person one at a time and address those comments that way. Is there any preference among those who are here participating? Should we just go, we don't have that many people here, so we can go person by person and ask for comments on each one.
Well, I know from my point of view, almost on every page for sure, in most of the sections. So I prefer to go section by section. Again, Ray had a lot of good input, and I don't see that here.
So you're not seeing it on the Ray's. A lot of Ray's changes are on the screen that we of the version that we're talking about that's displayed on the screen. So I'm not sure how recently your copy was printed out, but the everything that's on the screen was, I think, up to 2 hours ago. Ray was still making.
Well, what I'm looking at is Brock's cross out, and he's got Sweet Home crossed out, and Ray's was included Sweet Home Managed Outreach and Research.
Yeah, I
Resource
didn't
Facility.
cross out Sweet
Dick.
Home. So
Yeah.
it's the only piece that I crossed out was homeless, and it should
Good.
be unsheltered, not
Yeah.
homeless.
Sheltered, okay.
Can I just
Right.
say, Dick, that Sweet Home crossed out was Robert and I. It's for a managed outreach resource facility in Sweet Home.
Perfect.
Right. Yeah, but I didn't see it. Yeah, that's fine. As long as we know where it came from.
And also, Robert, I don't know how we got community in that title. I think I should take that back out.
That's right. Thank you.
I put community because we are a community. We offer community services. We offer rent assistance. We do a lot with the elderly in Sweet Home. And eventually we will have that community center portion, which is available to individuals that aren't just unsheltered. It's for everyone. And that's why I added community. But it's up to you guys.
That's a good argument.
I see no reason to get rid of community. I think we can leave that in there. Okay.
The only reason I remove homeless is because in the homeless community, it's regarded as insensitive. So if anything where it says homeless, we say unsheltered, it at least makes me happier.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Because there is some places in here we took it out of the name, but we still have it in here on several places because regardless of the name being unsheltered or it's a central function of what we're doing here.
Yeah. Well, if unsheltered is a good word, we can replace homeless with unsheltered everywhere.
Yeah.
No problem.
Okay.
That way, if like there's a wildfire or there's an earthquake or there's a flood that we have unsheltered people, we can house all of them.
Okay.
That type of dynamic. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
So ask Dick what else he wants.
What? So, Dick, you're saying you want to go through this paragraph by paragraph?
Just going through.
Okay. So we talked about the title. First paragraph is just the agreement, talks about the parties. And then we'll go on to work to be performed. Number 1. Any comment on section 1, work to be performed?
That seemed okay to me. I don't know about others.
Yeah, I don't
Okay.
have anything on that.
All right. Moving on to 2, term of contract. Any comment on that?
Yes, my comment was that it reads a little broad.
Mhm.
It implies that you can get away with termination without notice. Somebody just calls at 8 in the morning and said, "I'm done. I'm not doing it." Where does it appear that you can give some reasonable notice?
A process.
So this says that basically this agreement will be terminated automatically when the lease is terminated.
Right.
The lease, and then later in the lease, it talks about the termination process for the lease, which I believe the current draft we have specifies 15 days notice.
Right.
By either party. I will say though that when you're in an arrangement like this, having an out for the city and for FAC is kind of a good thing for both sides. It's not like this is not necessarily an employment arrangement. If people aren't happy with the way things are going and we can't resolve our differences easily, we do want to be able to get out of it. So I'm not sure that that's necessarily a problem having it that broad.
Well, the problem I had, it reads, at which time it shall be terminated automatically without reference to the lease.
Just to comment on that was my thought in there is somebody comes in and they say we're gonna split, we're gonna terminate, and they say the lease is terminated. The rest of that was in there is because they'll probably forget about the agreement for services.
Mm-hmm.
That was the only point that I was trying to make there. They'll just say the lease is terminated and you're out of here and we're out of here and we're down the road. And then somebody else comes in and says, "Oh no, my goodness, you didn't terminate our agreement of services." And my idea was is once the lease is terminated, the services it terminates it automatically terminates the agreement of service.
Yeah, because if there's no site, there's no services.
Right. We're out of it.
Yeah, I don't disagree. It just read clumsily to me.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Gotcha. Any other comments on the term of the contract? All right, moving on. Compensation. City provides the land area set forth in Exhibit A for the site. It gives the address. In exchange, the contractor operates the facility day to day. Parties agree that the city will not and is not responsible for payment to the contractor for its labor. and that the contractor will look to its own sources of income to pay for the operation of the sleep center and the facilities. Any comments on that?
So the first paragraph, thank you for taking out the or at another location, because all I could think of is moving it to another city, which would not work at all.
I think the intent beyond that was to take into account moving to any other site within Sweet Home.
Yeah, it was just left over from the when we were trying to deal with Lynn County.
Yeah, previously, yeah.
Yep.
No,
yep.
I appreciate that. It just read funny. And this is one of those places, again, we're adding community before resource, and, you know, Lisa can clean up all that.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the next one, I'm trying to sleep. Yeah, okay, you crossed out the sleep center. I caught that too. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Moving on to.
I don't mean to overdo this. Everybody, you know, break in.
No worries. Moving on to section 4. Oh, go ahead.
I was just wondering, I put in the chat if that would be the address for the unsheltered sleep center.
The address that's listed there, 3225 Main Street, is the address of City Hall. And so it's the closest address, physical address to the site.
So we will need to get a new physical address for the site.
Well, that's a good question. The only reason you would need a new physical address is, well, I mean, if you want to get mail there.
ID.
Yeah, we will be getting mail there, and our clients will be getting mail there.
Okay. So that's something
you can use that for now.
Yeah, we can work on that, either a PO box, or we can get a separate, see about getting a separate mailing address.
It would have to be a street address. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, we can work on that.
Where's that going to be in?
Well, I don't know that that's something that needs to be in the agreement necessarily.
Okay.
That's just something that my department would work on to get you guys a separate mailing address.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right. Moving on to section 4, lease.
I didn't have anything, but
okay.
Okay. Section 5, applicable laws and standards.
I just have to change the words around in there to match up with what people have said the scope is supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
So the players will all be the same, but what I understand it is the FAC's there, and then their board or their group that they're going to have, and then on the city side there's this health committee and the city council.
So my input is you've got, at least on my screen, you have if done in a peaceful manner shaded, and that was my. That's way too subjective. Peaceful means a lot of things depending on whether you're Jeff Lynn or somebody at a bar.
I guess maybe non-physical means would be the term or the intent.
I'm not sure you need it. You do it according to the policy manual. Brock might be able to help, but
yeah, I don't. This is where it's starting to get. We may be borrowing from Walla Walla, but in this instance, we're very fortunate in that Larry Horton is the, I guess, health subcommittee lead for the homeless, but he's also on the FAC board. So he's representing the health committee and the board. And, so as long as we have representation from the health committee as well as the FAC, I mean, I'm okay with it. So, okay. This is where it gets into the legal aspect that
I think, Brock, Brock, I think you skipped on to the last paragraph.
Right.
What we're talking about is the previous, the sentence before that. This idea
if done,
having the authority to enforce if done in a peaceful manner. I think maybe we just ought to get rid of if done in a peaceful manner entirely.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna
One
assume
of-
that anyway, and if they aren't, we'll, kick their asses.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, everybody should be in a peaceful manner, so.
Yeah, that's right.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of understood.
Okay, perfect.
Mutual agreement.
All right. Any other comments on that section 5? Moving on then, and feel free to stop me if something comes up, but we want to make sure we get through everything in a reasonable amount of time. Section 6, certification regarding debarment, suspension, and other responsibility matters, primacy covered transactions. So this is basically just the certification that people are not, who are working on this are not excluded by, civil judgments, criminal offenses, etc.
I had a question. It's just a question about small letter 3, the A and the 2. What does that refer back to?
It's been changed. It's been changed to the little a and the little 2.
Yeah, that's just
Right.
referring back to the previous paragraph.
Okay, that threw me way off. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Robert, there's a blank. There's on little 5 on V, little 5.
Mm-hmm.
This is where the prospective primary participant is unable to certify to any blank of the statements in this certification. That's
There's nothing there.
Not a blank.
Oh,
It's
it's
not
not?
blank.
Oh, that's,
Just the weird format.
okay, never mind then.
Yeah.
They
That
dropped it. Yeah.
All right, formatting
Mhm.
issue.
Mhm.
Any other comments on those provisions?
Nope.
Okay, 7, relationship of the parties. This is what Robert was talking about earlier with that this is not, the contractor is solely responsible. This is not a partnership. Contractor is an independent contractor, not agent or employee of the city. And anybody who's employees and volunteers who are providing services to the contractor, they're deemed employees or volunteers solely of the contractor, not of the city.
Yeah.
Okay. 8, insurance. See the lease. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
9.
And in our insurance, it does name the city as well
As an additional insured.
contractor. So if, let's say, one of your folks came to do some work, they are in fact covered by our insurance as well.
Okay. 9, indemnification and hold harmless. That's pretty standard language. I don't have any comments on that. Anyone else?
This is my experience talking. I got in trouble once. If you could page down a little, the second to the last paragraph,
Mhm.
specifically and expressly, and Robert can help me just give me language. I have trouble when we, in a contract, allow people to waive their rights. And the first sentence reads as if, there are laws that allow you to do things, but this expressly waives any. And I just struggle with that.
Well, the only
This
thing you're right. I understand what you're saying. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes under law.
Yeah.
But the point of it is, it says a contractor specifically and expressly waives any immunity that they may be granted under the laws of the state of Oregon as allowed by said laws. And so if the court or the legislature or the court comes up and says you can't do that, then you can't do that. And we say that here. That's why you say as allowed by, that's what they're trying to say, as allowed by said laws. If it says that you can't waive it, you can't waive it. We're not trying to get around that. All the drafter was saying was you waive what we can waive.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And if the state of
So
Oregon somehow changed the law, we would have to follow that law.
Right,
Right.
Yeah.
And the court would be involved. Yeah.
right.
Okay, I'm
right.
sorry. All right.
That's okay. That's the way it reads to me.
Any other comments on that section? All right, that brings us to paragraph 10, assignment and delegation. So the contractor can't assign or transfer or delegate any of these responsibilities to someone else unless there's prior written consent of the city.
That's
Yeah,
probably
I
fine.
did-
We will have some components of that for some of our services since we don't provide those services. But with the approval of the city, I'm sure they would approve it, you know, for our food contract and for some of our contracts with some of our partners for people and such. I don't think they'd have a
Right.
problem. So
And I
it
think,
seems reasonable.
right, and in the scope of work, a lot of those things are things that it says that FAC will endeavor to do. It doesn't say that they specifically have to do.
Yeah.
We'll
We'll
do
be
it,
the
yeah.
point person or the person whose head, you know, you can chop
Right.
for these. Right. Perfect.
As long as we have a head to chop, that's really what we're worried about, right?
That's the important piece. Exactly. No, I agree. I used to do some federal contracts and you got to have one.
All right, that brings us to 11 subcontracts, which basically says that except otherwise provided, the contractor is not going to enter into any subcontracts without attaining prior written approval. It's the same thing as the previous paragraph in some ways.
Yep.
12, non-discrimination and workers' compensation. You contract the FAC agrees to not discriminate.
Somebody corrected what I caught. I'd never heard of work compensation.
Yeah, it was.
One would wish, but yes, it's workers, yeah.
Yep. 13, nighttime security. City agrees to provide nighttime security for the managed outreach and resource facility. Nighttime shall be from dusk to dawn.
So
My
I'm still
comment on,
working on that with Ray, but I believe it's from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. But let's confirm that. But I'm flexible either way. But dusk and dawn mean things, and so you may want to put from 10 to 7. And that's what the agreement is right now, anyway. I mean, I'd love it to be dusk to dawn, but I'm not sure those funds are really there for that. So we
right. I mean, I guess my concern was mainly that in the wintertime, dusk is like 4 o'clock.
Exactly.
And you still have people, you still have FAC folks on site at that time, not to mention city staff that are in City Hall.
Exactly.
And so there's not necessarily a need for security to be there that early.
No.
On the other hand, the opposite in the mornings when you don't have the sun rising until, 8 o'clock, you've got security there a long time. So it is I'm wondering if maybe set hours are a better idea.
Yeah. Let's ask Ray what those hours should be.
The set hours.
It deals directly with his budget and with his agreement. So.
Yeah.
The set hours actually show up farther down. We don't need to go right there, but in required services, they have 6 to 10, and that's lined out in mine. So someone has already had this discussion. So
yeah,
go ahead.
That's true, and I guess that's a good question. Does the security need to when FAC doesn't have people there? Do we have to have security there to fill that gap? So are we trying to match so that 24 hours a day there's either security or FAC personnel?
That's the intent.
Is that the intent?
We have an individual or individuals there 24 hours.
So, Rob,
and if I might, this might actually be the perfect place for that board to work, because things will come up. And if you put it in this contract, it gets a little tough to change. So, I mean, I'll just throw that out there.
Yep, I think you're right on.
So Brock, later on, it has that FAC will have intake, registration, and site assignment processes from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. would you then want security to be from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m.? Or do you,
That's kind
or
of the
is some
intent,
kind of
yeah.
overlap needed?
Well, I'm a little less familiar because we haven't really run it that way. I know that in Walla Walla, they run it from 10, I think, to 6 or 7. And
Mhm.
I don't know what overlap they do or don't have, but this, I mean, I'm flexible with Ray and your team to figure out what the right number is.
Okay.
I just may have to raise more money or, you know, or less money, depending on if we
Maybe
have to staff it.
Jeff Lynn may has some feedback about this.
Well,
Agreed.
I would be hesitant putting a specific time in there because it's going to be difficult.
Yeah, and I know
And I
Ray
kind of
was
agree with the
negotiating.
idea of that 7-person board being able to really help dictate what nighttime is,
Okay.
and just leave some flexibility in there.
Okay.
I agree, and I know Ray has been negotiating with the security company or his team, so we probably need to find out what his thinking is on that too.
Okay. So that's
Agreed.
something that we'll have to fill in. The staff will have to fill in at a later time then.
And it's per now, whatever it is, it's whatever Ray dictates it is, and then we'll fill it in, fill in the gap.
Well, I mean, keep in mind, this is something that's got to be approved by the city council also. So this
Agreed.
is not necessarily just what Ray thinks. That
Yeah.
certainly has a bearing. But
Totally
the
agree.
intent here is to make sure that both there's adequate security, but also adequate security that the city can afford.
Exactly.
So that's. I'm thinking we do need to set some sort of actual hours rather than dusk to dawn, but what those hours are going to fluctuate depending on what we can afford and
Perfect.
what the site needs.
Yeah, because I am putting in extra money for grants for Jeff's group and this group as well. But
Okay.
just FYI that.
May I, sir, Chief, when is your biggest problems? Is it during the night or is it all the time?
Oh, I don't have the specifics with me in front.
Okay.
There are certain days of the week that are heavier in call loads.
Yeah.
Wednesdays, Saturdays come to mind. But the time,
Payday, first
Yeah,
of the month.
I know that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. I'm fine with it.
Well, and this is something that probably should be reviewed on a regular basis in the future. As you know, there are times when security is more needed than other times.
Correct.
As we get into operation.
And that's where I think it's, not being extremely specific could be beneficial, so you don't have to come back through and change an entire document.
So we could have something in there that says something like nighttime shall be from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m., but may be adjusted periodically by the policy board to reflect actual needs, or something like that.
Something like that.
Blair, does Walla Walla change their time?
I don't know.
I don't think they did, but I could be wrong.
No, they don't. They go from 10 to 7.
Yeah.
So I mean, we can basically recommend to Ray that, hey, let's start with 10 to 7, but then let's include some provisions for that to be adjusted.
Yeah.
By the boards. So that we're
I'm not necessarily.
in.
I don't think necessarily we need to switch that back and forth 3 or 4 times, but it might be an option to do that at different times of the year.
Yeah. Okay. Any other comment on security? All right. 14, entire agreement. The agreement and the lease shall be considered the entire agreement. And then that brings us on, which I think is pretty basic. I hope nobody has any comments on that. Or if you do, speak up. We'll move on, though. Exhibit A is the scope of services. All right. So required services to be performed as part of the agreement are, so one is that those hours, the intake and registration, etc. Brock, you're still at 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. That's correct?
That works.
All right.
Yeah, it's whatever Ray and your team feels is the best for that, yeah. And we'll adjust as it's needed.
2 is document and keep track of problematic individuals and share information with security staff. 3, ensure there is reciprocal ongoing information sharing.
Yeah, just for this committee's, just because this is the committee, just to let you know that Walla Walla does share that log evenings with the police department to let them know, you know, how many stations they may have available and other aspects of what's kind of going on. So, you know, that's entirely up to Jeff, but I just wanted to let or put at ease the mindset of this committee that though informally it's this document to log, you know, problematic, but it's really a close relationship between the two.
So
Right.
do we need to add then to sharing with security staff, also sharing with the police department?
I don't know if it needs to be in a contract, but it's part of our policy.
Okay.
And I would argue that last parenthetical sentence probably isn't necessary. It's nice as an idea, possibly a joint logbook, but it probably doesn't belong here because once again, that's something that the committee can decide along with Jeff, along with Brock and Shirley. I mean, those are things that will develop and may change over time. So
Yeah.
I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it there. It just looks odd.
I agree with you, Vic. Actually, it can probably be removed.
So remove all of number 2?
No. The parenthetical in number 3.
Possibly a joint logbook,
Yeah,
which
that-
could, there you go.
I don't think that's really necessary.
Thank you.
Perfect.
All right.
Part of
4,
this is to appease the community as well, if they were to look at this.
right.
Yeah.
4 is document.
Just before we go, and we're having a staff meeting again. This isn't the committee.
Right.
This is for the record. We're having a staff meeting.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. Thanks for keeping us legal. 4, document behaviors that would constitute 24-hour removal. Ensure that those are shared. 5, document ongoing behaviors that may result in elevated exclusionary timeframes, 30, 60, 90-day exclusions from the facility. That would be imposed by the city manager, and then I added or designee, which is always a good
Thank
idea.
you. Yeah, I had the same idea.
Actually, I got my idea from you, Dick, so. 6, enforce facility rules as set forth in the policy set by the 7-person policy board.
Could I go backwards? I'm sorry, Blair. Could we go backwards? I also had a thought, this is off the top of my head at the time, after designee, maybe a phrase about staff discretion. I'll let you guys think about that. But it helps, it helps not getting calls at 2 a.m. and, Sunday when everybody wants to sleep in. You might add a phrase that allows staff discretion. Now, my experience that relies on a staff that may or may not know what they're doing. No offense to anybody.
Yeah.
So, but it just occurred to me, the city manager is going to get calls at 2 a.m. and on Saturday and wish he hadn't. So you might think about that, Blair.
I think and I think with the policies that the policy board puts in place, will have empower people who are volunteers to do something about problem individuals.
Yeah, what kind of isn't noted here is that our policy document is over 100 pages long. And so it goes into detail how to go about this. And some of it involves some police action and some other things. So we'll have the board review it, and I'm good with that.
Okay.
I think I'm just trying to protect the city manager.
Yep, you're right.
I'm sure Ray appreciates that.
Ray's on my speed dial.
Not
So-
mine.
that brings us to, so on 6, enforce the facility rules as set. I was wondering if maybe we can create a name for this policy board instead of referring to it as the 7-person policy board, which just seems kind of awkward. You could just call it the policy board or something like that, but.
Well, will it not be a policy board for the managed homeless facility?
Yeah. So you could.
And at the very first time that you use it, you could call it the Managed Homeless Facility Policy Board. And then throughout, you can have capitals policy board, you refer to it back. There's some legal ways to do that. It's a good catch. I have
Sure.
the same feeling.
So, and maybe we can play with the order here because we should probably talk about FAC agreeing to form the policy board before talking about what the policy board can do.
Well, we'll talk about it in authorization and that number
Yeah.
4.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's just coming up with a name. What name do you want?
I think you could just call it the policy board.
Okay.
I agree.
This brings us to 7. FAC agrees to form the policy board, and this specifies who's on it and what kind of policies and decisions it's administration that they're responsible for. Has to include one city council member, the police chief or designee, and then FAC will endeavor to include healthcare professional, mental health, or
That's all
behavioral.
scratched out on mine.
Oh, it's not scratched out on mine or on the current.
Yeah, I talked with Ray this afternoon and we unscratched it out. I scratched it out because from a legal standpoint, endeavor means we'll do our best effort, and that's okay, but we'll certainly do that. I agree with that, but to put it in a contract, it's not very enforceable when you say endeavor. That's the only reason I scratched it out, but Ray convinced me that it's important to kind of include this because others are looking at this, and we will in fact try to have someone on as far as mental health and his health care, and we actually have a homeless individual identified for this board, as well as a individual that does advocacy for this type of group as well. So I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Good.
That brings us to 8. FAC shall endeavor to form partnerships with various healthcare providers, including mental health care. And then the next 2 are related. 9 is endeavor to find partners for dental care. 10, endeavor to find the resources for financial counseling. 11, endeavor to connect clients with state, federal, and local programs.
This is a point which Ray, we had conversations. So I am bringing dental to Sweet Home. It's not just for our houseless community, but it's for the community of Sweet Home. So anybody with low income will be able to utilize our dental care. And so these are areas that that are additional services that we felt were important to mention in this contract, I guess. So I'm okay with that as well. The other piece I want to mention is the interchangeability of clients versus guests, because if you say client, there's some connotation. Guests has a connotation, and so we're trying to be a little more trauma informed when it comes to some of our nomenclature. But I'm flexible.
Should it be clients then and not guests?
It probably should be guests, not clients. But
guests, not clients.
It depends on which piece you're talking about too. But I mean, we're really trying to treat them as guests, because let's say there's a wildfire and we have guests. They aren't they may be houseless at the moment, but they're away from their homes because there's fire. And then if the fire ends and their house exists, then they go back. If not, then we figure out a best way for transitioning. But
Okay.
We want to
I-
provide
I have
environment
to-
for everybody.
I have to say from my past experiences, I would have settled on clients, but Brock said exactly what needs to be said, which is this, we're trying to make this available to people who've just had a very bad experience for a week or so and just need a transition to get on from a fire, flood, volcano, whatever comes up.
But
Okay.
they
Yeah.
can't be-
Domestic violence. It
I
doesn't
mean,
matter.
politically, okay, they can't be called all clients.
No, because you're not a client. If you need a place to stay because your house just got burned down or whatever. You're not going to look for extra resources. Now, the one is broad.
Well, then you got temporary clients, and permanent clients, or semi-permanent clients.
Yeah, but they
They're
can
all-
but they can also be guests. Yeah, I'm not arguing. I'm just pointing out that it feels better. We've made a point about not making this just for homeless. If it was just for the homeless, I might talk clients, but we're not. We're trying to open this to people who are, just had a bad, again, flood, fire, whatever it is. So my perspective would be guest feels better.
Okay. I don't have a preference on that, but I mean, from FAC's perspective, if they think guests is more appropriate, I have no problem with it being guests throughout. I think it's understood.
Well, it's not I mean, it's clients 95% of the time and 95% of the stuff that you're going to do. So don't you just use clients everywhere and then put in a sentence or something that says clients includes guests? Like you say, attorney, and you say it includes district attorney, city attorney, or any other attorney. I mean, rather than, because
unless you have clients or guests, and then define what a guest is.
That's a
I'm
good
not too
compromise.
hung up on this term, to be honest.
Yeah, no,
It's
neither am
a
I.
trauma-informed type
That's right.
experience, and to be honest with you, most of our calls lately have been from your elderly that are
Right.
facing rent eviction and things like that, more than our houseless community that's contacting us lately. So it can be anybody. We service a lot of different constituents, but I'm okay. We can.
I like Bob's idea, clients or guests.
And like I said, all you have to do is put something in there that defines what a definition of a client or a guest. I mean, that to me would be done. But a guest,
Sounds good.
But a guest would be defined as someone that's been displaced by the flood, the fire, whatever.
but do you have to define them? Can't you just say in here that in our document, client includes guests?
Perfect.
I think it's
That
just
would work
anybody
too.
who's receiving any of the services.
Yeah.
Regardless of what it is. Okay.
Looks like you have a hand raised. You have a hand raised.
No, I'm just scratching my head.
Yeah, no, I do.
Oh.
No,
Sorry.
I'm sorry, you guys. I hate to interrupt. I worked with social services for 20 years. I think guest is great. When I hear the word client, I'm thinking about vendors. I'm thinking about vendors who are going to be assisting the guest when I hear the word client.
Right.
And client has more of an annotation of somebody who's hired or seeking someone to work for them. In my opinion, I think guest is a wonderful idea. That's all I'm going to say, and carry on.
Okay. You have to remember Bob's an attorney, so we have to be careful here.
Yeah, okay. But I'm just saying that, like I said, I think guest is a wonderful term. And when I hear the word client, I'm thinking of somebody who is like, you hire somebody. Like my client is somebody who hired me.
Right.
And I know it's just a matter of semantics, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
Bye.
I think we'll,
There's a bunch of us that share that.
There's another hand raised, Emily.
oh, okay.
Is that the same hand or different?
Same hand.
I agree with Leah. I think it should be guest.
Okay.
Client is like seems more like a legal term or a social service term.
Okay. So based on this feedback, I think we'll go back and discuss it as staff and find what legally puts us on the best ground, but that's good to know. I think even if the documents say one thing, I think just in colloquial usage, it'll be guests.
There you go. There you go.
All right. 12, the goal is to transition each client to permanent housing, or each guest to permanent housing. 13, FAC shall provide quarterly reports to the city. And it specifies guests entered, guests exited, services offered, the type, the number of guests, total hours of service. And then I added on here violations and criminal activities, if any, and consequences that were resulting from that. I think that's something that the city will want to have in a report.
That may have to partially come from the police department because we may or may not be aware of some of those. So
well,
we're okay with that. I
from,
think we need to do those kind of metrics.
The intent, I guess my intent is that if you're keeping track of the guests who have come in, who are getting your services, and the guests who are done, it mainly keeping track of what the problems are.
I agree.
So whether
we're
that,
actually we have weekly reports, monthly reports, and I totally agree to these quarterly reports.
Okay.
I agree to the reports, but I think if we're going to include violations, we also need to include what kind of positive outcomes that have also been.
Sure. I think,
noted.
Yeah.
See, part of my issue is once it becomes criminal, that falls under Chief Lind and his group because we don't do criminal.
Okay, we can get rid of criminal. That's fine.
Okay.
My intent mainly was that this is essentially a report to the city. It's going to be a public document. We want to make sure that it's transparent. The public can see that yes, there are people being served and that there are good things happening, but also these are the problems that we've encountered and how we have reacted to them, so that the public knows that there is structure, there are rules that are being enforced. That was the intent. However we word that is fine with me, but
yeah, because one of our issues, just to give an example for everybody, is we do not sit there and go, do you have a warrant for your arrest when they intake? Because if they have a warrant, we're a what do they call it? We're a reporter, so we would have to report. We have a warrant for your arrest. We have to call Chief Lynn and go, we have this client or guest, and he has a warrant, and so I want to be careful that we aren't a police action as well. We'll certainly work with them, but we're not going to try to infringe on people's rights or try to catch people, in this, initiative.
I also I would prefer that be removed, and any type of issues associated that our department is dealing with, we can report on separately.
And Blair, if I might, if you decide to take it out, put it in the back of your head and then bring it up to the board that gets formed, that 7-person board, because this is the kind of thing that they can ask for in a report. Doesn't have to be extensive. It may respond to just something that's been going on for the last 2 or 3 months, that sort of thing. It doesn't have to be in here and required every time.
Okay. All right.
And the chief and the police agency and us are two peas in a pod, so I'm comfortable.
Okay. Brings us to voluntary services that may be performed by the FAC that are not included as part of the agreement by and between the City of Sweet Home and FAC. That is, provide each tent with essentially accommodations, toiletries, etc. Assist clients to develop an individual healthy lifestyle plan to exit homelessness.
Yeah, we just changed that because we have so many individuals that for rent assistance and other endeavors that we just put, there's some clients that we're working on alcohol and drug rehabilitation and housing and those things, but we have quite a few calls going, hey, can I get ID? Can I get help? And so that's why we put the healthy lifestyle plan.
Okay. Sounds good to me. Any other comments on those voluntary services?
Number 4, yeah, okay, you added when feasible. That's exactly the term I used.
Okay. All right. That brings us to the actual lease agreement.
Well done, Blair. Thank you.
All right. So the first paragraph is just determining what the parties are. And then the second paragraph is just the agreement to lease and the actual location.
I think I would ask Robert on that, if we're actually giving it a unique address, should we use that unique address rather than City Hall's address?
Well, if we had one, we would.
Yeah, the fact is we don't have one right now.
You don't, but you're going to put it in a lease, and if it's a different address afterwards,
right?
Does that complicate the matter?
No, it's going, it's not going to complicate it other than the fact that if we had an address, we'd put it in there, but we don't. So we're using the closest address we have and basically describing the area as the purple area on Exhibit A.
Yeah.
So that's going to define the area.
So if we can get an address before this is approved, we'll go ahead and swap that in. If we can't, I don't want that to be anything that is delaying.
We call it 3225A Main Street.
So we have some city. I'll get with Joe on this. We have some city rules on how addresses are developed, and then of course we have to have the post office weigh in on this. So
yeah, so
we will
a little bit of
go ahead and do
background.
that.
The reason we need a separate address is that we will in fact be intake of mail and mail services, and we are working with the post office on kind of doing that dynamic. So that's why it's important for us.
Well, and I know that having a PO box can have a number of problems for people who are trying to use that as their only
for IDs
mail. So
and other aspects, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Moving on to the recitals. It's a lease authorized by ORS, and the parties understand that Lessee intends to have an outreach and resource facility managed by employees and volunteers of FAC, known as the Managed Outreach and Community Resource Facility.
Does anybody have a problem in there having it? I know we don't want to use the homeless, but having the words in there that say unsheltered sleep center?
No issue with unsheltered instead of homeless. Yeah, we can put unsheltered as a piece of that.
Robert, is your concern that it doesn't really describe what it really is?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, someplace in here or a couple places in here, I think we need to get down to the brass tacks that this is for the major part of why we're doing it, why the city's involved it is a sleep center.
Yep.
The other parts are fine and they may be great, but someplace in here it needs to identify that it's a sleep center.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We can either include that in the name or or we can include it somewhere in.
Well, we've
document.
already decided on the name part or whatever. I've got no problem in sticking it in and, authorized use down here and in the recitals.
Okay.
It's,
If you got a place to stick it, well, that's fine.
yeah.
My memory is that Ray was the one that was suggesting we do not want to call it a sleep center. I can't remember whether it was a council meeting or whatever. We should run it by. We should run it by.
Right. I've got a note here for Ray. He'll decide on that. I just think someplace in here, the major function that you're doing should be described.
Yeah. For the
Whether it's
house,
just in authorized use, someplace.
Yeah. Okay. That brings us to number 1, the term. Term of the lease commences on blank, will be continue until terminated by one of the parties, as stated in subsection 30 of the lease. And then, but it cannot exceed 99 years in accordance with ORS. All right. Rent
It's going to be number 2.
is number 2. Lessee shall pay $1 for the whole term. Sounds good. Not a moneymaker.
No.
3, lessee's acceptance of the lease. 4, authorized use. So this is where what essentially the lessees shall use it for the purpose of the center, of the facility, whatever the name is, and will not use it for any other purpose. I think sleep center is in here. Yeah. So we need to revise that if that's not what it is.
Yeah.
Any comments on that? Okay. Hazardous substances. That's fairly self-explanatory. Any comments on that? Okay. Payment of utilities. The lessee shall pay. That's the city. Or no, that's FAC.
Yep.
All charges for water, sewer, electricity, security alarm, and other public and private utilities. Comments on that? Okay, repairs and improvements. Essentially, the city will not be required to make any repairs, additions, alterations, etc. So shall not be required to, but most likely will be involved in some way.
Correct.
3, maintenance of property. So the lessee agrees to keep and maintain the premises. I was curious to anybody's thoughts on first class condition. I'm not sure what that means, or if that's a term we want to be using here.
Well, it's probably copied.
I had a similar question. Once again, this is a subjective kind of thing, but if it's copied from something I don't know, it's unfamiliar to me.
Can we just say maintain it in good condition? And then let the further language define that. It said so that the same will always be neat, clean, and attractive, and in good state of repair.
I just had a second thought. If you keep it at first class condition, you're going to have people in the community that are going to argue that this was not a first class condition place.
Sure.
But that kind of goes with the territory. So there's a tolerance level all that sort of stuff. So
Hmm.
it's kind of a setup to leave it at first class.
Yeah, well, I'm
Good
not even
condition
sure
is-
you need to even say good. It's in a condition so that the same will always be neat and clean and attractive. I mean, then we can, I guess, argue what's attractive and what's clean and what's neat, but
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay.
but we all agree this is, so just so this committee knows, we have been contacted by Corvallis and a couple other communities. There are a lot of nonprofit groups as well as community groups like Corvallis Housing First that is watching this endeavor. They're actually amazed by it. They're quite envious of what we're putting together. So we want to make it something that's magical.
Well, but on the other hand, first class is a, what is it, the Holiday Inn? Yeah.
So we'll go.
Well,
with
my
good,
first
good,
class is,
move
yeah,
on.
definitely the
Blair,
Crown
let me
or-
interrupt just a second. Are we
A
gonna,
little different.
when we have a quorum, are we gonna have to go through this whole thing all over again?
I don't think so. I think the city can basically take the feedback we're hearing and we can put together a draft that FAC agrees to and put it before the council at the next meeting. I don't think
So
we just
all-
can't say at that council meeting that this is what the committee
Okay,
voted to
but my
recommend.
question is, the people that are not here, are they gonna have questions that we're gonna need to answer at another meeting?
You know, I don't know what to tell people if they're not here. I mean, we do what we can to get people to come and give their feedback. And those members of the committee who are not here, they have access to all of the documents that we're talking about, and they'll have access to this pretty much immediately because it's on Microsoft Teams and they can log in and read through it. So they certainly have the ability to make their comments still.
Okay, all right. I'm concerned about having to go through this whole process all over again.
I don't want to.
No, we don't either.
We're not doing that till
And hopefully the committee with the city would go through it if there were any differences of opinion after this.
Okay. That brings us to 4 improvements by lessee. We talked about that already, and just added the, except for,
The site
any
plan.
improvements that are, except for those shown on the site plan, should be removed. Okay. 5, erection of signs is okay. 6, pruning and watering landscape vegetation. I'm just going to keep going until somebody says they have a
Okay.
comment. 7, right of entry by lessor. So the city has the right to enter the property. 8, payment of taxes and other assessments. I don't think those will apply, but just in case they do, if there are any, it would be the lessee responsible for them. 9, payment of fire insurance premiums. Lessee is required to carry fire insurance on the structures on the leased premises. We'll provide that to the lessor. 10, assignment and subletting. This lease cannot be assigned or sublet without lessor's prior written consent. 11, damage or destruction. If there is damage by fire or other casualty, lessee can rebuild at its own expense. 12, liability insurance. So this is essentially the requirement that the lessee carries insurance and defend the lessor from any claims or demands. I think the key point here is the amount, and I think, Brock, you've already mentioned that you're looking into meeting the 3 million, but 2 million is good.
Yeah, when I talked with Ray, he mentioned this was a template from Walla Walla, and so I asked, does Sweets Home actually require it? The only reason why is because I showed this to my insurance agent. He goes, look, you're covered for this, this, and this. If we have to go for 3, then we will have to, in a sense, kind of rebid our whole insurance And he says that can get fairly complex. And I didn't want to hold up our deal because I'm trying to maneuver insurance. So we're certainly going to try for the 3 or whatever you endeavor or whatever you require. And we'll certainly get bids. But I'm here to tell you, I'm paying well over $10,000 a year right now for insurance to have 2, 2, and 2. I don't know what it will cost for more. And we'll have to see it. And I'm happy to go bid it. I just don't know if we'll get it or not. There's a lot of shelters and facilities that are actually coming to us now going, how did you get insurance? How did you get insurance? So it is a complexity around the sheltering and sheltering world. I start getting leery going, I don't want anything to inhibit the contract, but if Sweet Home requires it, we'll go out and bid it.
I think that's probably a discussion for Ray and the council to have to make sure that we're protecting ourselves.
We're protected.
Yeah. But on the other hand, as you say, it's a difficult thing in the unsheltered world, and so we don't want to rock the boat too much and
we
jeopardize any coverage we have.
Our agent really did pick premiums and amounts that match what happens in Oregon, as well as what's reasonable for, those type of possibilities, I guess I should say.
Okay. All right. Any other comments on insurance? All right. 13, injuries and property damage. Lessee shall indemnify and hold harmless lessor. And then there's, of course, insure and be responsible for personal property placed on the premises. Any comments on that? Okay. 14, eminent domain. In case of condemnation, this is just pretty standard language. Not likely to occur.
Yeah.
15, surrender of premises. There's that first class condition again. Probably change that to good, the same as the previous one.
Okay, got it.
Okay. 16, holding over. In the event the lessee for any reason shall hold over after the expiration of the lease, such holding over shall not be deemed to operate as a renewal. Pretty standard.
Yep.
17, default. Don't really see anything there. 18, liens. Lessee will not permit a lien or encumbrance of any kind on the property. Notices. This probably needs to have a number, Julie. Yeah, it's a formatting thing. Just the addresses of where notices are sent.
You've still got the post office box 714 Lebanon? Brock?
Yeah, that's currently FAC's post office box.
Okay.
So.
Okay, good.
Okay.
And that's
right.
our where we get a lot of our legal documents as well. So
Right.
Okay.
Perfect.
Rights of successors and assigns, attorney's fees and court costs, waiver. This is all pretty standard legal language.
Yep.
Time is of the essence. Stuff on language, counterparts, and then finally termination. Either party can terminate this lease 15 days after written notice to the other party.
Okay. It'll say either party can terminate this lease with 15 written notice to the other party. It doesn't terminate 15.
Oh, so with 15 days written notice?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's with 15 days written notice to the other party.
Okay. And that's
Thanks, Bob.
That's it.
Yay.
Any other comments?
Since we're at the end of everything and we're just going to go home tonight, I would ask that we all take a moment of silence for the homeless person that we lost Friday night in his tent in the Sweet Home property because he was unsheltered.
We can certainly do that.
Thank you. May he rest in peace.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that we need to talk about tonight?
We can't.
Well,
We
we can
are-
talk about
We're,
fishing or something.
that's true. That's true. I don't
Well,
think so.
If you're interested, I could give a very quick update as to where we're at on some of the goings on, if people are interested. If not, I can save it and report it another time.
5 minutes, Brock.
Okay.
2 minutes,
Quickly-
Brock. It's 3 minutes on the card here. 3
Okay,
minutes.
I can do it in 2. Basically, we're making great progress. Weyerhaeuser is donating all of the stick lumber, like 2x4, 2x6s. Larry was able to find a really, really good deal on our plywood. In fact, we're going from 5/8 to 3/4 inch plywood. Home Depot has a grant that will be essentially activated at the end of the month. But until then, I have a really good relationship with the manager of Home Depot, and they say that they do have some funds for what they call incidentals or supplies or things like that until this grant comes through. As a side note, unfortunately, I missed a really important grant. It was for $715,000, the timing of it, but I've been in conversation with the procurement officer that has put us on the quote special list. We'll be resubmitting it sometime in April. And in that case, I'm submitting a $1, $3, and $5 million plan for them. And they're very interested in what we're doing and the activities we're doing. And in the 1, 3, and 5, I'm expanding services into mental health and hopefully providing a mental health care facility and some other more business oriented, as well as ongoing housing and ongoing healthcare type activities. So I'll be sharing more and more of that with this group and such. But just to kind of let you know of some of the things we're working on. We also been working with Todd Noble, Lynn County Health, with a grant on what they call harm reduction. This has to do with education, needle exchange, condoms, information, and just help for individuals, what they call bandages and medication supplies, things like that. So there's a lot of activity going on in the background. We are going to put another notice out for hiring people. So stay tuned and keep a lookout, and we'd appreciate any shares and help in locating people that might need a position with us as well.
Sounds good, Brock.
Thank you.
Thank you again so much. We really appreciate you guys.
When I got the message to come to this meeting tonight, Ray was hoping we could get this done and get it signed. Obviously, that's not going to happen. But I would recommend that we get this done as soon as we can and get that off to Ray, so we can have the council going ahead on this and get that taken care of, because it is important. It is. It really is. And anyway, so if there's nothing else, then we'll.
Robert, you got everything you need?
I agree. Let's have it signed, and then we can have the council ratify it or whatever he needs to have done. But my intent is that from our standpoint and from the city standpoint, it's signed and ready to go, and all the council has to do is approve it or have conditions or whatever they would like to do with it.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's the council's thing, not just this group. But anyways, anybody else? Anything else?
Mm-mm.
We'll stop at 7:30.
Thanks,
You all.
everybody.
Bye, everyone.